Thank you for not only your invitation, but thank you to all of you who were kind enough to join us. However, I don't see anybody, so I don't know if that means you all are wearing pajamas and don't want to be seen, or you're just bashful. But I remember, hey, there's Waverly. Yes, I remember being in Bermuda and finding some of the nicest, friendliest people with warm smiles. So I don't know why you're so bashful. I know that you look good enough on camera as you look in person. So I would encourage you and invite you to open your camera so we can see you. It's easier to speak to faces than it is to speak to just names. So that's why I'm inviting you to be on. And it's interesting, Pastor, that this is a meeting for pastors, but I see that we have some lady spies. They want to know what it is that we talk about. They just I don't want to say they're nosy. They're just spying. That's what they're trying to do. Well, I'm also in New York City, and although I'm actually in Yonkers, New York, which is just north of the city. So it's not quite stormy here yet, but I understand it's moving in this direction. So hopefully it won't be too bad. My wife is down in Maryland at home, and she tells me it is stormy down there. So I guess considering the hot, blazing hot weather we have had lately, the clouds and the rain hopefully will cool things down a little. Or although if I know the East Coast as well as I do, and probably the same with Bermuda, following the rain comes high humidity. But hey, that's part of the summer months, and I guess we'll have to put up with that until it gets a little cooler, hopefully within the next couple of months. So I'm glad that I can spend this time addressing the men and the spy ladies on the subject of, are you a house band? And I want to begin with a story that is very meaningful to me. I just recently found out about it, but it's meaningful because it happened in the city of Joplin, Missouri, where our younger daughter lived for 2 years when she was still in medical school. She was doing some of her medical rotations there in Joplin, Missouri. And I have to confess, when they moved there, it was right after the big tornado that just about destroyed the city of Joplin, Missouri. So when she and her husband moved there, we were always worried. Every time we would hear that there's going to be a tornado that is going to be, or a tornado warning, I should say, close to Joplin, we would start praying very hard that they would be safe. And praise God, the 2 years that they were there, they didn't have any tornadoes. But it's special because we saw the devastation. We visited them and we saw the devastation that tornado caused there in Joplin. And so when I read this story, it took me back to that tornado and our visit in Joplin. And the story is about a husband and a wife who were living there in Joplin. In fact, the article that I read in the newspaper started by saying that he's the husband that made the ultimate sacrifice to save his wife's life. As the roaring winds of the 200 miles per hour tornado, I'll say that again, 200 miles per hour tornado, as it ripped through Joplin, Missouri, Don Lansall did everything he could to protect his wife. Again, I want to emphasize that 200 miles per hour tornado. Just to give you an idea, the main hospital, which I don't remember exactly, but it was either 4 or 5 stories high, a huge building was moved off its foundation. Think about that. The 200-mile-per-hour winds of that tornado moved this massive structure off its foundation so that they had to abandon the hospital. They had to build a new hospital, and that building was demolished. It has been demolished since. But imagine the power, the intensity of this tornado that could move a huge hospital off its foundation. Well, when that was going on, Don Lansall did everything he could to protect his wife. Her name, Bethany, revealed that as the devastating tornado saved, or rather tore, their home apart, her husband jumped on top of her. She was inside the bathtub, and he jumped on top of her to protect her, to shield her, to save her from the winds that were tearing their house apart. She said, he got on top of me to take the brunt of most of it, and he's my hero. That's what she said about her husband, that he jumped on top of her to act as a shield, as a shelter, as a protector, as the one that would help keep her safe. And she said, I mean, the house was ripping apart. It all happened so fast. All the pillows were flying off of us. The only thing I managed to do was keep one in front of my face. And then as the winds died down, Mrs. Lansall looked up to see that her husband was now turning blue. Hoping she could still save him, she flagged down a pickup truck to get help to find an ambulance, but unfortunately it was too late. After 6 years of marriage, just 6 years of marriage, her childhood sweetheart had died protecting his wife, shielding his wife from that horrible tornado. So I begin our presentation with that story because that's the image of a house band, a husband who protects, who gives his life to keep his wife, to keep his family safe. That's a house band. Now, before we get into that, we need to talk about the terminology a little bit. So what is a husband? I didn't say house band. What is a husband? Well, in the Hebrew society of the Bible, the husband was the absolute authority in the home. Whatever the husband said, that's what the household did. But when the Apostle Paul came into the life of the church, he called on husbands to temper their authority with the higher value of love. And so in Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 25, we read those words from Paul, husbands, love your wives. He didn't say, husbands, be the boss of your wife. Husband, be a tyrant. Husband, be the chief. Husband, be the one that tells your wife and children what to do all the time. No, he says, husband, love your wife. In fact, later in that chapter, Paul compared the relationship between Christ and the church to that of the husband and wife, the union that should exist between the husband and wife. And that's why sometimes I ask the question, when did Jesus abuse his wife, the church? When did Jesus abandon his wife, the church? When did Jesus neglect his wife, the church? Well, we know the answer to that. Jesus never abused us, never neglected us, never abandoned us. And so when Paul says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church, he's saying to us, act the same way. Be kind, be gentle, be loving, be protective of your wife and of your children. Now, the dictionary definition of a husband has two different definitions, actually. First, it says that husband is used as a noun, and the definition says that a married man or a husband is a married man considered in relationship to his spouse. That's what a husband is. But it's also used as a verb. You use that or to explain how husband, or how we reserve, or how we conserve resources. So for instance, we could say something like the need to husband the remaining strength. You need to husband reserve. You need to husband your remaining strength. You need to keep that remaining strength, is the meaning that is trying to give to husband as a verb. Now, I don't know if you ever heard the word husband explained. Pastor Quinones just mentioned a little bit of that. It means literally the band of the house. the support of it, the person who keeps it together as a band keeps together a sheaf of wheat or corn or whatever it may be. Now, there are many married men who are not husbands. There are they are not the band of the house. They're not the ones that keep it together. I remember when I was a pastor, in fact, not too many miles from where I am right now, and received a call from a couple, and they needed for me to come to their house to visit them because they were facing serious situations. And when I got to their house, I remember the wife opened the door, and I could tell by her facial expression that she was very angry. Not with me, she was very angry, obviously, or I assumed that she was very angry with her husband. And she barely opened the door, said, "Hello, Pastor, just come in, have a seat." Not none of the pleasantries that you think should go in at the beginning of a visit. It was just straight to the point. "Pastor, come in, have a seat." And okay, so we sat down and I said, "How are things going?" And again, very curt, she said, "Not so good, but I'll let him tell you." Of course, the husband, I could tell, was very uncomfortable, very upset, very downtrodden. And so very slowly, and you could tell he felt very humiliated to have to tell this story. He began to tell me that one day when he left work on his way home, he stopped by a casino. So I happen in an area where there are many casinos, and he stopped by a casino. He says, "I never done that, but I thought, we're saving money to buy a house. Maybe I'll get lucky and get some money." And so he went into the casino. He went into just inside the door. That's all he did, and put a quarter in the machine, pulled the lever, cling, cling, cling. And guess what? He got $15 right off the bat. An investment of 25 cents, and he got $15 immediately. So he thought, "Hey, this may be my lucky night." And so he took his earnings, those $15, he went further inside the casino. And by the time he was finished that night, he had lost $500. Well, he was embarrassed, but he chose to not tell his wife. He said, "A couple of weeks later, I was on my way home and I thought, I wonder if my luck has changed and I could make up the loss that I experienced a couple of weeks ago, but I'm not going to go to that casino." So he went to a different casino. Right there at the door, he put a quarter in, pulled the lever, ding, ding, ding. $50 he won right off the bat. And he thought, my luck has changed. He took his $50, went further into the casino, and by the end of the night, he had lost $2,000. And he began that pattern. He would go in, he would make a little bit, and then he would lose a lot. He would make a little bit, he would lose a lot. By the way, when I was a pastor in the state of Delaware, one of my members, in fact, my head deacon, was a state trooper. And in the state of Delaware, the state troopers are the ones that, I'm not sure if I would say regulate, but they oversee the gambling machines in the state of Delaware. And he was telling me that the machines closest to the door are usually programmed to pay. It's a hook. Once you're in, they're not programmed to steal, but they're not programmed to pay either. But the ones closest to the door, they're programmed to pay so that they hook you in. And once you're in, then very often you'll end up losing a lot of money. Well, that's what was happening to this man. He would go in, make a little bit of money at the door, then would go farther in and lose a lot of money. And so now we come to this day, to when he was telling me this, and this is when the wife took over the story and says, "He just told me that. He just told me that he's been doing that now for several weeks, in fact, a couple of months. And he just told me that the $25,000 we had been saving as a down payment for the house is completely gone, are completely gone." He lost $25,000. Sad to say, that marriage didn't last. She couldn't trust him. She couldn't trust him with finances. She couldn't trust him to tell the truth. And so, unfortunately, he and she separated and eventually were divorced. So we could say that he did not act as a house band. He didn't bring the family together by his actions, by his withholding the truth, by his keeping secrets. He divided the family, tore it apart until unfortunately it didn't survive. Truly, in many cases, the wife acts like the husband. Far too many times, it is she, by her carefulness, her thrift, her economy, that keeps the house together. Very often, in many homes, the wife is the priest or the priestess of the home because the husband does not want to act or does not act as the priest of the house. The married man who, by his self-indulging habits, strips his house of all comfort is not a husband, is not a house band. In the legal sense, he is, but in no other, for he is not a house band. In fact, we could say that instead of keeping things together, he scatters them abroad to pawnbrokers, to banks, to loan companies, or to whatever other institutions he has been indebted to. Now, I have to tell you, I've never really thought much about what the dictionary definition of a husband is, and I'm not so sure that other men have, until I looked it up. I didn't realize, or I hadn't really thought, that the word husband can be used both as a noun and as a verb. But in fact, people talk about husbandry. So it is, in fact, both a noun and a verb. Like most of us, I have just thought of or referred to as to a husband as a noun, a man who is married to a woman. And by the way, please notice that I specifically said a man who is married to a woman. You with me? I know Ricardo is because he's nodding, but the rest of you, I don't know. You may be sleeping for all I know because your cameras are still off. Well, and Pastor is still also there. Okay. The married, I'm sorry, that like most of us, I have just thought again that the husband was just a man who was married to a woman. But please keep in mind that husband can also be used as a verb, like you said. In other words, being a husband is more than just a title. It also requires specific actions. You don't just simply become a husband because you say, I do, and then all the privileges that come with being a husband come to you, but you do nothing to earn them or nothing to apply your husbandry to your home. The word husband is the result of combining the words house and band. House and band. And so by definition, even when I'm tired, even when I'm frustrated, even when I feel unfulfilled or busy, my job as a house band is to bind, to tie the house together. What that means is that the pressing need to complete whatever other responsibility we have is going to have to lose out momentarily to the need of my wife and the needs of my children, because right now my presence is needed to tie this family together. A number of years ago, John Gray wrote the book, Men Are From Mars, Women From Venus, and that's where he verbalized or conceptualized the idea of the man cave. And the idea is that we men need this place, this little man cave where we can be apart from everything and everybody, where we can be able to relax, to rest, to be re-energized, those kinds of things. I believe in that idea. I agree with that idea. I encourage men to have their man cave. But what I also say is Don't stay in the man cave. Rejoin your wife. And there are times when I may even have to say, I can't go into my little man cave because my wife needs me. I can't spend time in my man cave because my children need me. That's what's part of being a house band. I can't be selfish and think only of myself, my needs, what I need and deserve and desperately seek for. I may have to be unselfish at this moment and go with my wife and pick up the broom and help her a little bit, or help her with the kids and the housework, or maybe cook a meal, or maybe do the laundry, or whatever it may be. If I can help her now, I'm acting as a house band. A house band, distinctly different from a man only labeled as a husband, carries out three primary actions. And these are the three things that I want us to learn tonight as we speak together about husbandry, about being a husband. Three things that we need to, three actions that we as husbands need to apply. Number one, we need to be stewards. Number two, we need to be leaders. Number three, we need to be gardeners. But I need to explain those to you. First, a husband or house band needs to act as a steward. A husband acts out of a sense of responsibility to take care of or to oversee the needs of his wife, the needs of his children, the needs of their home. A steward recognizes the need to be the one that holds the job of arranging the household structure in a way that leads to the betterment of his wife and children and their home. That's why when my wife says, can you please clean up the garage? She's not being selfish. She's just not nagging. She's reminding me that when I clean the garage, I'm doing it not just because it looks good, not just so that I can park my car in the garage, but it's a matter of safety. I'm thinking of tornadoes. I'm thinking of hurricanes. Although I suppose in the United States, a house will probably not withstand, at least many houses will not withstand hurricanes as well as your houses in Bermuda do. But still, if I have my car in the garage, maybe I won't get pelted, or it won't get pelted with the hail that sometimes follows or precedes a tornado, or the rain or the wind, or branches flying off of trees or whatever it is. So it's a matter of safety. So as a steward, I want to take care of the house. That's why I take care of whatever repairs I can handle. And if I can't handle them, then I call the people that specialize in those repairs, because that's part of taking care of the home, and therefore making it safe and comfortable and appealing to my wife and to my children. Of course, my kids don't live at home with me anymore, but when they come, I want them to feel comfortable. I want them to feel welcome. I want them to feel like this is a nice place for them to come to. That's what a steward does. That role, by the way, of being a steward was built into men at the Garden of Eden, when God said to Adam to tend the earth, to name the animals, to be fruitful and to multiply. God was telling Adam, these are the tasks that I'm giving you as a steward of what I'm giving to you. I'm giving you the earth. I'm giving you a wife. I'm giving you a family. You be the steward of every one of these things that I'm giving to you. By the way, I read, and you probably have read these words before, in the book Adventist Home, these beautiful words about that task that God gave to Adam, and therefore to all of us as men. To Adam, she says, was given the work of caring for the garden. The Creator knew that Adam could not be happy without employment. This is interesting because, a number of us would say, oh man, if I didn't have to go to work. But God said he knew that men would not be happy without employment. I remember when I was a pastor in a church, there was a guy that was in the Air Force for 20 years. As soon as he did his 20 years, he retired, but he retired as a young man. I mean, he was barely 40, maybe 41 years old. And he retired and he said, I've done my work. I've retired. I will just live off of my retirement. So he did. He lived in a house that was given to him by his parents, so he didn't have any expenses there. But his retirement was not really that good, so that in the winter months, he lived without heat in a place where it gets very cold. And in the summer, when it's blazing hot as it is now, he lived in a house without air conditioning. He drove very, very old cars. Sometimes they were falling apart, and sometimes they left them to walk because they stopped working. And then he would buy the cheapest car he could possibly buy again because he didn't have money. And the reason he didn't have much money is because he said, "I am not working anymore," even though the money that he was getting for retirement was just not sufficient. But part of the problem with him also was that he would then spend all day long, basically, studying the Bible and coming to conclusions that very often were totally wrong. He became, I have to say, a pain in the mind and backs of many people in the church, including many pastors, including this one. I had to sit with him many times and try to enlighten him, guide him, and he would refuse and argue and all that. He had too much time in his hands. He would have been better off getting even a part-time job than doing absolutely nothing. Again, to Adam was given the work of caring for the garden. The Creator knew that Adam could not be happy without employment. The beauty of the garden delighted him, but this was not enough. He must have labor to call into existence the wonderful organs of the body. Had happiness consisted in doing nothing, man, in his state of holy innocence, would have been left unemployed. But he who created man knew what would be for his happiness. And no sooner had he created him that he gave him his appointed work. He promised the promise of future glory, and the decree that man must toil for his daily bread came from the same throne. A house band is a good steward of his children as well. I remind you of the words of Paul in Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 4, where he wrote, "Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger by the way that you treat them. Rather, bring them up with the discipline and instruction that comes from the Lord." A husband is a good steward of the home, is a good steward of his wife, is a good steward of his children. There's a devotional that was written many, many years ago. Obviously, Ellen White wrote the different portions of it, but the White estate put it together as a devotional, and it's called the faith I live by. I don't know if you remember that many years ago. And so I found in that devotional some more of the account of creation in relationship to Adam and in relationship to him as a steward, and to us as house bands, as stewards of our home. And so she says there in the faith I live by, if you want to look it up, if you happen to have it, or if you have the app, the Ellen White app, which is free, is on page 265. The Christian father is the house band of his family, binding them close to the throne of God. Never is his interest in his children to flag. The father who has a family of boys should not leave these restless boys wholly to the care of the mother. He should make himself their companion and friend. He should exert himself to keep them from evil associates. He should take more of the burden upon himself, doing all in his power to lead his boys to God. By the way, men have changed a lot in the last, I'm going to say maybe 40 to 50 years. Before then, it was very common that the husband would go to work and the wife would stay home to raise the children. But women became more educated, jobs were open to women, and so then women began to work in the marketplace. The problem is that husband would work and come home and rest. Women would work outside the home and come home and continue working. Well, with time, again, that has changed, and more men have accepted that we have a joint responsibility for our household. But even in homes where husbands help, statistically, the research shows that women still tend to do most or more of the housework. And what she's saying is that we should lead by example. Instead of just telling the kids, go take the garbage out, well, I can tell the kids to do that if I'm vacuuming or sweeping or doing something in the house as well. But if I'm just sitting back watching TV, to tell the kids to do that, that may just simply cause them to become rebellious one day. Why is it that I have to do this and you don't do that? So we have to lead by example. She continues by saying, when children lose their self-control and speak passionate words, the parents should for a time keep silent. Silence is golden and will do more to bring repentance than any words that can be uttered. Satan is well pleased when parents irritate their children by speaking harsh, angry words. And then she quotes Colossians chapter 3, verse 21, fathers, provoke not your children to anger, lest they be discouraged. Let your calmness help to restore them to a proper frame of mind. Let me just finish. This is a one day's devotional, so I really think it's important to read the entire portion instead of just one or two paragraphs. So she keeps saying, by kind and judicious management, fathers as well as mothers should bind their children to them by the strong ties of reverence, gratitude, and love, and should kindle in their young hearts an earnest longing for righteousness and truth. While the mother seeks to implant good principles, the father should see that the precious seed is not choked by the growth of evil. His sterner discipline is needed that his children may learn firmness and self-control. And then she closes by saying, Christian father, labor kindly, patiently for the welfare of your children. Seek to turn their hearts to the bright beams of the Sun of Righteousness. Teach them by precept and example that the Spirit of Christ is the spirit of doing good. So the first thing that a husband should be is a good steward of his home. The second, he should be a good leader. A husband does not dictate nor seek to control. Rather, he engages his wife in ways that gets the best of her. You know, at times, you have to do that through silence. When your wife comes home and begins to tell you of something that happened to her at work, my advice to you is that you keep your mouth shut. Don't start telling her what she should have done or what she should do, but rather listen. Now, it doesn't mean that you just kind of put your head on your hand and just listen like you're bored to death, but you can nod in agreement, or, maybe you can encourage her. So what happened next? Oh, and what did you say? Oh, and what did they tell you? So you're engaging in a conversation, showing her that you are paying attention to her without any attempt at fixing her problem or fixing her, because that's not what she's asking of you. Very often when women are telling you their problems, when your wife is telling you her problems, what she's saying is, listen to me. I need to unburden. I don't need you to fix me. I just need you to listen to what I'm saying. At other times, you do that through compassion. Yes, she's upset because something is not working out. She had a loss. Well, express that compassion, that understanding, that sadness that she's having to deal with that. Don't just say, that's kind of silly that you feel that way. Why are you crying? I don't understand. It doesn't make any sense to me. No, express. This must be difficult. I am sorry that you're having to go through this. Please tell me more about it. I want to know. I want to understand what's going on in your mind and your heart right now. But at all times, the husband manages to be patient and loving with his wife. But to be an effective leader, A house band and father must know the people that are under his care to be effective leader, to be an effective leader to them. By the way, and this is something that sometimes I know we have learned through the years, we men, that is, have learned through the years, but sometimes we still forget that the house band, as the leader of the home, accepts and appreciates his wife as an equal, as an equal. I'm quoting again from Ellen White. This is a different devotional. It's one called Christ Triumphant. And on page 145, she says, the wife is to stand by the side of the husband as his equal. She should feel that she is her husband's equal, to stand by his side. She faithful at her post of duty and he at his. Her work in the education of her children is in every respect as elevating and ennobling as any post of duty he may be called to fill, even if it is to be the chief magistrate of the nation. Think about that. Even if he's the president, even if he's the prime minister or the speaker of the house. I don't know if my brother is with us. I'm not being personal here. I just know who I'm talking to. Maybe if Dennis, because I'm assuming he's still the Speaker of the House there in Bermuda. Okay. So even if he is still the Speaker of the House and his wife says, Dennis, I need you to vacuum, he can't say, I don't help in this house. I'm the Speaker of the House here in Bermuda. No, of course, I'm going to get in trouble here for telling his wife to how to handle the Speaker of the House in Bermuda. But, what's what she's saying. Your title, whatever that may be, doctor or engineer or architect or CEO or supervisor or chief of police, whatever that title may be, is as important as what she does. And you as husband and wives are equal in the work of family keeping. Now, as the leader of the home, the house band is to protect his wife. This comes from Patriarchs and Prophets. I'm sure you have heard these words before. I just like to repeat them again. Eve was created from a rib taken from the side of Adam, signifying that she was not to control him as the head, nor to be trampled under his feet as an inferior, but to stand by his side as an equal, to be loved and protected by him. A part of man, bone of his bone and flesh of his flesh, she was his second self, showing the close union and the affectionate attachment that should exist in this relation. I was just thinking, Pastor, if Miranda is watching this, she's gonna wait till Dennis comes home tonight and tells him to do who knows how much work, because I told her that she should tell the Speaker of the House to do all kinds of work. I may not be welcome in Bermuda anymore after this. Who knows? The question is, what kind of leader should a husband be? Well, I think we need to go back to our model, and that is Jesus Christ. I recall Jesus the night before he was arrested, or the night he was arrested, the night before his crucifixion. He gathered with his disciples there in the upper room, and we read in John chapter 13 and verse 5 that after he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with a towel with which he was girded. That was unheard of. It's interesting that he was the guest of honor. He was the one that should have had someone wash his feet. But all the disciples thought was, hey, someone's got to do it, but it ain't me. I'm going to see who comes and wash our feet, including Jesus's feet. But it sure's not going to be me. That would be humiliating. When suddenly Jesus gets up, gets a towel, gets the water basin, gets the pitcher, pours the water, and starts washing the disciples' feet. And they were shocked to see this, thinking, has he lost his mind? What is he doing? Well, what he was doing was giving us all, not just them, but giving us all an example of a true leader. It's what we call servant leadership. He, being the leader, became the servant. So when every so often when a husband says to me, I am the leader of my house, and I have to turn to him and say, oh, wonderful. So you're the one who serves your wife, right? You're the one who serves your children, right? Oh, no, no, I'm the leader. Don't you understand? Yes, I do. I do understand perfectly. You're telling me you are the leader just like Jesus. You serve your wife and your children. You see, that's not the way that many people think, especially that many men think. They think that leadership means everyone should serve me. Not if you follow the pattern of Jesus, because you're equal as husband and wife. If you are indeed the leader, you need to be the servant of everyone. So a husband should be a steward, a husband should be a leader, and a husband should be or act as a gardener. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to have a garden. I don't have a garden in my house. I have a black thumb. I kill plastic plants. I mean, that's how bad I am. I couldn't raise weeds if I wanted to. I just have a very bad finger or thumb for growing things, and so I don't have a garden. So I'm not saying that you should have a literal garden, but what I mean is that the husband, as the gardener, prepares his wife to develop into her fullest potential. The gardener breaks up the ground and prepares it to bring forth a crop. You and I may not be literally trying to produce corn or vegetables, but as the house band, I want to prepare and position my wife so that she can be successful in any area that she wishes to pursue. It doesn't mean that she can only become her best if I allow her to do that, or if I encourage her to do that. She should be able to do that on her own, anyways. But as a house band, I want to prepare everything to make it possible for her to be successful. Maybe I'll tell you a little bit about our story, my wife and my story, so you can understand what I'm talking about. When my wife and I first met back in 1978, I had already been a student at Columbia Union College in Tacoma Park, Maryland, for one semester. At that time, the enrollment, the student body was somewhere around 900, so it was very easy to basically know most everyone in the school. So when my wife came after graduating from Shenandoah Valley Academy, when she came, I recognized very quickly that she was new, and I wanted to protect her and save her from all those boys that might be looking at her. So immediately I asked her out, and fortunately for me, she accepted. She came to Columbia Union College and enrolled as an early childhood education major, which is a 2-year certificate. I was a theology student, which is a 4-year program. So as we started dating, very quickly, it became obvious that we were going to go one day in the direction of marriage. And so I started talking to her and saying, you'll graduate in 2 years with an early childhood education, which means you'll be able to teach kindergarten, first and second, and that's kind of the limit. But I can tell you're very bright. Not only that, but I tell you, I'm a little selfish here. What am I going to do the next 2 years when you're gone? And so she agreed with that and changed her major to elementary education, which is a 4-year program. Not only would we be together for 4 years, but also she could then teach every grade from kindergarten to 8th grade. Well, that opened more doors. We graduated together from Columbia Union College. Many years later, when we were pastoring in New Jersey, she started to take some classes as a teacher. She had to maintain her certification with the state of New Jersey. So she started to take, this class and that class. And I said to her, wouldn't it be better if you took classes toward a master's program? Well, so I requested a leave of absence and I moved to Virginia, to Roanoke, Virginia, to pursue my master's in counseling psychology. And of course, she came with me. In fact, I wasn't working, she was teaching. And then she started taking classes toward her master's program too, so that a couple of years later, I graduated from a master's in psychology. And the year after that, she graduated with a master's in curriculum development in education. And she thought, I'm done with school. This is a wonderful life. And then a number of years later, I was given the opportunity to begin my doctoral program. So I started and I said to her, why don't you start yours? Oh, I don't know if I'll be accepted. I don't know if I have the time and this and that and the other. I said, well, the worst they can say is no. Well, guess what? She applied and she was accepted. The conference was willing to help pay for some of her student studies. I graduated with my doctoral program 1 year, and she graduated from her PhD the following year. What I'm saying is, my wife is very intelligent, very bright. She could have done it all without me saying anything. But part of being a house band is making it feasible for my wife to pursue more education, therefore have a better job, therefore be more compatible in her environment as an educator. It's not that I gave her permission. She didn't ask for my permission. She didn't need my permission. I wanted to encourage her. That's what I mean by being a good gardener, a gardener of my wife's well-being, of my wife's future, of my wife's career pursuits. That's what a husband should do. Don't just sit back and think, hey, as long as I've got a wife that cooks for me and washes clothes and, I'm happy with that. But ask her, what is your dream? What are your dreams? What are your aspirations? How can I help you pursue your dreams? As a good gardener, I'm redefining myself so that I can help my wife and my wife's life be better and stronger instead of weaker and emptier. If all I'm concerned about it is my own ambitions and agendas without regard to the needs of my wife, I'm not a good husband, a good house band. So understanding these primary aspects of the definition of a house band moves me away from a life focused only on me and makes me more concerned about taking care of, managing, and cultivating the best of my wife. So I suspect that most of us as husbands have thought about these things in general terms. I've been thinking in more concrete terms of my role as a husband, and I have seen areas where I have not lived up to that definition completely. And I'm not going to give you the dirty laundry of my life, but I know, and God knows, that I have not always acted like a good house band or a good husband. I've given you some examples of some things that I've done well, not so that you can say, boy, this guy is great. He's the perfect husband. Absolutely not. Because if I told you that the times where I have failed, well, I would be ashamed to say it to begin with, and you might just turn the computer off and say, this guy's not worth listening to. But God's grace is wonderful. He has forgiven me, excuse me, and he has taught me, he has helped me to grow, and he has helped me to be a better house band for my wife so that she can also be a better wife, a better mother, a better person altogether. So I'm redefining my actions toward my family so that I'm not just a noun, not just a man who's married to his woman or a woman, but hopefully that I am a verb, a man of action for my wife and for my family. And that's what I challenge all of you men watching and listening, that you be a house band as a verb, not just as a noun. And for those of you ladies who are spying on our presentation for men, I encourage you to encourage your house bands to also be the best that they can be, to be the type of house band that you would want him to be. Encourage him, strengthen him, pray for him, listen to him. He also needs your help. So that, Pastor, is my presentation for tonight, or for you guys. And I don't know what you had in mind, Pastor, if you wanted to close with prayer as a devotional, or if you wanted to open up any kind of dialogue.